I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is, you made it! And I made it! This is the first overview episode in my Zelda 3 tutorial series, and we have found each other. I will do a live coding tutorial on Twitch every Saturday at 6 PM CET, and after the stream's done, I'm going to create a video like this, a short YouTube video outlining what we did. In the live stream, I will recreate the mechanics of one of my favorite games, Zelda 3, A Link to the Past, and hopefully teach you a little bit about coding in the process. But you don't have to follow a 2-hour live stream if you're not that much into the coding aspect. These YouTube episodes will give you a bird's eye view on the project and teach you the basic thought process that went into the game without diving too much into the code itself. So if you're into coding, or if you're just interested in learning the basics about what it takes to make a game, you have come to the right place. And now for the bad news. Last Saturday was my very first Twitch live stream, and after the stream was finished I realized that I forgot to save the stream locally and to tell Twitch to save it for me. So basically, the first episode is already lost. Great start. But that won't stop us now. Welcome to this first overview episode. Sit down, get comfortable, and let's code some games. The first stream was all about learning how to structure our code so we don't get lost in it once the project gets bigger. For this purpose, we are using something called the ModelViewControl Pattern. By following this pattern, we structure our code in such a way that we can reuse many of its parts for different purposes. This basically means we separate our code into 3 different areas. For example, our main hero, called Lunk, has to be able to move. The first area is responsible for storing the necessary data, like the position of the character and how fast it can move. It is also in charge of the game rules that are moving the character. This area is called the model. The second area is in charge of how the character is displayed. It decides if the walk animation should be playing and in which direction the character is facing. This is called the view. The last part of the MVC pattern is called the controller. It listens for input from the player and tells the model and the view about it, so they can decide what to do. Different programmer teams have different variations of their interpretation of the MVC model. In our case, the view is allowed to observe the model to receive relevant information, but only the controller is allowed to actively send data to the model or the view. By structuring our code this way, we can easily swap out the different parts and combine them as we wish. So we can use the movement model that we created for our hero, swap out the view, and we have a new character that can move. Now we also swap out the controller, so we don't listen for user input anymore, and let the character move automatically. And boom! A new enemy is done. We can even create different controllers for each input mechanism we want to support. Do you want the game to be played on a desktop PC? Simply create a keyboard controller. Should it be played on a console instead? No problem. Just remove the keyboard controller and create a gamepad controller instead. The benefit is that you only touch the controller part, so you know that the movement in the model and the animations in the view haven't changed. And if something hasn't changed, you can't have any new mistakes or bugs in your code. We are going to use the MVC pattern all over our project, starting with the basic movement, which is super simple to do. The movement model stores a value that represents how fast the character is able to move, and it has a rule that moves the character. Those rules are called methods or functions. The view observes the model to see if the character is moving or not, and to receive the direction the character is moving in. We are going to use that information to decide if we want to display the idle or the walking animation, and in which direction the character is facing. And finally, the controller checks if the user has pressed any of the movement buttons W, A, S, or D. If one of those buttons is pressed, the controller sends the appropriate movement direction to the model. The model then moves the character, and the view makes sure that the character is looking in the right direction. And that is all for the first episode. Next week we are going to animate the character and create a basic level with obstacles the player cannot pass through. And if we have the time, we can even create some objects that the player can interact with. You can get the full source and all the assets we use in this project for free in our Git repository or in the Unity Asset Store. The links to both are in the description or on letscodegames.com/Zelda. Do you like this tutorial and want to support us so we can do more? Simply share this video and tell your friends about this series. And don't forget to subscribe yourself. If you want to help us financially, you can buy a special version of this project in the Unity Asset Store that includes all the same assets, but in a very high quality. I hope to see you at the next live stream on Saturday. It's going to be at 6 PM in Europe, 1 PM on the East Coast, and 10 AM on the West Coast. Until then, code some games! This episode was written and edited by me, Oliver Eberlei. The music was composed by Robert Taubler and Michael Hasselmann, and the graphics for the game were created by Jessica Karp.